Welcome to Season 9 of the award-winning Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor. I'm a retail educator, trainer and retail conference MC. Each week as your host, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share their knowledge and give you an insight into the retail industry. You can listen back to previous seasons on your favourite podcast platform, and while you're there, do me a favour, hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. You can watch us over on YouTube and subscribe to the Retail Tea Break because you've no idea how useful that is to ensure that I can keep bringing you the content that you love. And remember, sharing is caring in the retail industry. Share an episode across any of the platforms with your network. And if you're on social media, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. So, in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and enjoy Season 9 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. This episode is very kindly sponsored by RevLifter, the smarter way to run promotions that protect your profits. So instead of throwing discounts at everyone, watching margins vanish, RevLifter helps you make promotion budget work harder. Using real customer behaviour, it shows the right offer to the right person at the right time, turning browsers into buyers without destroying margins. RevLifter, smart promotions that deliver profit, not problems. So head over to www.revlifter.com and try intelligent offers free for the next 90 days. Go on, you won't regret it. Today, I'm joined by a recognised authority on store traffic and shopper conversion. He's over 20 years' experience using data-driven insights to help retailers, both independent and large-scale chains, in over 20 countries turn store visits into measurable results. He's author of When Retail Customers Count, the first book ever written dedicated to the study of store traffic. The next book, Conversion, the last great retail metric. His insights, of course, have been featured in leading business and retail publications, and he's featured Brain Trust contributor on retailwire.com. He was named one of Rethink Retail's top retail experts for 2025. He's also the founder and CEO of Headcount Corporation. Mark Ryski, author of Store Traffic is a Gift. Welcome to the Retail Tea Break podcast.
Oh my gosh. Thank you, Melissa. And it's such a delight to be here with you on your excellent podcast. Thank you.
Oh, you're so kind. And I am thrilled to have you on the podcast. I told you a couple of weeks ago when I read this book cover to cover, scribbled in it, I already have it kind of dogged, that I've learned so much from this book. Yes, I might be someone in the industry for over 25 years. Yes, I might teach aspects of retail, but it's great to pick up a book that's so practical, that's so tangible, but also just fed into new ideas that kind of put things together for me. So look, before we get into it, and we absolutely will, in the time that it takes to boil a kettle, which I am told is about 2 minutes, tell us a little bit more about you and your background in the industry.
Okay, well, 2 minutes. So I came across store traffic counting as somebody that worked in retail. My job at the time was marketing manager for a one-store computer store that sold computers and such. And I was responsible for driving sales and advertising, promotion, et cetera, et cetera. We'd run these promotions. At the end of the day, the owner of the store would count the money in the till and often say, that was just okay. And that irked me because I could see the store was teeming with customers and our dedicated team of 25 associates were doing the best they could, but we weren't converting all that traffic into sales. And that's when I knew I had to start counting traffic and measuring that conversion rate. I tried to buy a traffic counter, couldn't convince the owner to spend the paltry $2,500 to buy this device. And so I went to a couple of the students that worked in the store that were working on engineering degrees. I said, can you build me a basic traffic counter? They did. We started collecting this data and it forever changed the way we ran and operated that store. And that was the start of how I got into doing this work.
That's an issue or a problem that so many retailers have. They probably don't even realize it because, as you say, some people just look at that bottom figure on a Saturday, for instance, and just say, oh, great, you had an all right day. But actually, as you say, if you stood in that store and watched those people flood through the doors, listen to the conversations that were being had, there's something not quite right. So it's fantastic that you've really pinpointed that challenge that so many retailers, as you say, whether they're independents, whether they're large scale chains, everybody has this issue because very few are doing it right. So I suppose on that then, the new book, Store Traffic is a Gift, you've really opened up this idea of, yes, there's a challenge there, but you're solving it. There are solutions, there are actions to be taken. So what inspired you then to write this latest book?
The fact of the matter is, Melissa, when the COVID pandemic smashed into the retail industry in 2020, smashed into society writ large, it changed everything. It changed the way retailers had to retail. It changed the way shoppers had to shop. And one of the most profound lessons that came from the pandemic as it relates to retailers is just how precious that store traffic is. And you don't appreciate that until it's gone. And so I knew I had to update the ideas around store traffic and conversion analytics to account for these changes in retailing that really came as a result of COVID. Buy online, pick up in store, curbside pickup, all these new services, it changes traffic patterns, it changes intentionality of the visit to the store. And so that's what I wanted to do. I also wanted to remind retailers of how bloody precious that store traffic is. And too many retailers today, 5 years, COVID is 5 years in the rearview mirror. But it's not just about COVID. I think that retailers are, to a certain extent, taking it for granted. Yeah. People will come to our stores. If they come, they will buy. And that is just such a false assumption. And that's what I try to make clear in this book.
And you know what? I'm really glad you've called it out because I do feel here we are, as you say, 5 years on. We take it for granted that people will come, that they'll come to our shopping centres, that they will come to our malls, they'll come to our main street, high street shops or our flagships. But actually, as you've said there are so many other channels to purchase now. I won't even kick off with where we are with TikTok Shop and live shopping. There are so many platforms there. I have no need to come to your store because very few retailers nowadays, as we know, sell anything different that I can't actually buy online, even though it hurts me to say that. So, as you said, using those valuable, really valuable resources, people actually physically coming to you, making the most of that moment is surely the key thing every retailer should be doing right now.
100%. Retailers should be treating that traffic as a precious, non-renewable resource. When that shopper crosses the threshold into the store, that retailer must believe that they are there to make a purchase. And so all their effort, their resources, what they do in those four walls should be all in the service of helping that customer purchase what they came for, and they should assume that's what they're there for. When that shopper leaves the store without a purchase, there is no guarantee not only that they will ever come back, because they can buy from anywhere, online, offline, it doesn't matter where. There needs to be an urgency and a thought of preciousness about what that store visit is all about. And that's a big theme of the book.
I love that word precious. We really should be treating every single person that crosses that threshold as someone really precious. Building the relationships we know, that emotional kind of connection with the store is great. But you know what? They are obviously intentionally there. Therefore, we should be treating it that way. And as you say, I'm sure so many retailers right now don't use that. But the one other thing that really stood out of me, and again, I don't want to get grumpy because I love this book. One of the key things is the way that we are still managing stores. And I could get really narky now when we talk about this whole idea of allocating labor or our staffing, so scheduling our people versus our sales. It is antiquated. It was antiquated 20 years ago when I was running store floors, but that's the way they did it. That's the way the C-suite wanted to break up budget. Mark, why are we still doing it? It doesn't work.
Oh, I agree, Melissa. I will join your rant and rave about this because, yes, every retailer is solving for sales. Sales are how your business goes forward. We understand that. But retailers need to understand how those sales are being driven. Unfortunately, things like how staffing gets conducted and how importantly, how store level staff get paid is all about the sales. But here's the problem. Stores don't control traffic. They don't control the amount of traffic they get. So you can be a brilliant store team, a brilliant store manager, conversion rates through the roof, great customer service. But if nobody's coming through the store, your sales are going to look lackluster, which means you're going to get less labor. You're likely not getting a bonus or you're not getting promoted, yet you're doing a brilliant job. And so I spend a lot of time in this book talking about labor scheduling, how to engage store level staff, and how to compensate them in a completely different way based on what they can control. And that's converting those shoppers that are already in the store. That is what they should be held accountable for, not for traffic, and they're therefore not explicitly for the sales outcomes.
That sounds like it's an awful lot more empowering, Mark. It's empowering for the teams, it's empowering for the individual. And surely, actually, the retailer feels a little bit more in control when they look at things this way.
Well, that's exactly what happens. And, Melissa, over these, oh my gosh, over 30 years now, I've been doing this work. There's two groups of retailers. There's the retailers that still say to this day, what is this data going to tell me that I don't already know? And you have the other group that say, how can you possibly run a retail store without traffic and conversion data? So, you know, I've been trying to figure out the secret to why some feel one way and not the other. But I can tell you this, once a retailer starts looking at the data this way for the first time, and once it becomes part of how they operate their stores, that it becomes woven into the DNA. It becomes how they run their businesses.
It's the way it should be. And I absolutely wholeheartedly agree. As someone that, oh my goodness, for years, like so many people watching and listening this have had to run their rotas based on last year's sales, previous sales, what we think we might make this year. But actually, as you said, we're missing out on such a huge cohort of people walking through the doors who we haven't converted. And in that respect, to me, there's a training issue. There are bigger issues there. It's certainly the way I'm working with a lot of clients at the moment. But I suppose we've looked at kind of footfall and data there briefly. How do we then dig deeper into those teams? How do we empower them, bring them on board now and make them shine when we're looking at kind of conversion?
Well, I think that one of the most important things that you can do is bring the store team into the discussion. They need basic insights, not overwhelming them with data, not, letting them try to be data analysts and figure things out. They're busy. They should be spending their time and attention serving customers, but they need to know where to look. They need to know the whys behind what head office or what management wants them to do. And I can tell you this, that when you show a store team basic data, here's where traffic is in your store, here's where conversion rates are sagging consistently between 6 and 9 p.m. Why do we think that's happening? Oh, okay, well, let's solve the problem. When you empower people and you do that by providing them with basic but important insight, it changes everything. And then hold them accountable for the things that they can actually influence. It changes everything. It really does, Melissa. To your earlier point, though, too, it's not just about having the right number of people in the store. They also have to be engaged and trained and thoughtful about what they do. And so that's also part of what you work through when you see this data. You may have enough staff in the store, but conversion rates still don't go up. Then you have to ask, well, what are these frontline teams doing? How are they? Oh, we have them focused on tasking because task management says you must do these 10 things. Well, task management should say, number one, take care of the customer.
Do you know what? I'm seeing that play out, Mark. It's fascinating to having read this book at the same time that I've been working with two massive retailers on this very point. Because again, the savvy retailers are really working hard right now into converting their customers, seeing them in the first place. But obviously, then really trying to understand, are they purchasing today? And if not, actually, why not? If especially they're coming through the doors in the first place. But these two big retailers have really tasked me over the last few months with going back to basics. So figuring out what those tasks are that are being done on the shop floor, and actually, are they coming in ahead of speaking to our customers? And then when we are speaking to our customers, what are they saying? So are we really listening? So I love the fact this really marries in with the ideas in your book, because the good retailers, as you say, are workshopping these things with their teams. They're talking to them, they're explaining to them, but they're also listening to exactly what is going on to try and make things better. So the gulf is definitely growing, I feel, and I don't know if something you feel, between the retailers that are really trying to action what you're talking about in the book and those that just have a kind of a closed vision to, well, it is what it is and we'll just work the same way.
Exactly the world we live in, and it's complicated. Look, I give retailers a lot of grace. Operating retail business has always been hard, and I don't think it's ever been harder than it is today. Beyond COVID, you got hyperinflation, you got supply chain challenges. Now we have tariffs to contend with, and the truth is, retailers are going to continue to face all kinds of challenges. It's the nature of retailing. We serve the public. And that's why understanding basics like how many people are visiting your store and where you're converting and not converting is just so foundational to everything else. Anyway, more and more retailers, I think today in this age of AI and technology, et cetera, you hear this more frequently, getting back to basics, getting back to basics, getting back to basics. And I think that store traffic data is the cornflakes of analytics. That's the truth of the matter. It's so basic and fundamental, and it informs so much. But I think that's also the power of it.
And you know what, on that, and it's something I haven't actually asked you there. We're talking about, as you said, the real basics here, but the strong foundation that we build really good retailer on. I'm presuming, and I could be completely wrong, does every store or certainly retailers you've come across, are they all counting this footfall? Like, is that a given nowadays? Everyone has a footfall counter, or actually, are they missing that simple beginning of one of these key basics?
Shockingly, in this day and age, Melissa, I would say only about half of retailers count traffic in their stores. And here's what I base that on. This is not a scientific study. Every city that I travel to, I try to make time to do a mall audit. I literally will walk the entire mall and visit each retail store, and I will try to identify if I can see if they have a traffic counting device installed. And I've done this in malls all over. This is North America. I've done it all over North America. And about 50% of retailers have traffic counters, the other 50% don't. As you can appreciate, it's typically the largest, biggest brands that do have traffic counters. So that's a message to the smaller retailers. What do the big guys know that you don't know? But even if you have a traffic counter installed, and Melissa, this is what I discovered, it doesn't mean the retailer is doing anything meaningful with this data. I encountered the former chief data scientist for a very large, well-known electronics chain in North America. And she was a brilliant person. We had this great dialogue. And I asked her, I said, how do you and your executive team think about store traffic and conversion? And she said, oh, you know what? We do have store traffic data. We have counters installed, but you know what? It's just not on the radar of the executives at all. That's just a tool that we have for our store managers, and we think they're using them for staffing, but I was shocked. So even if a retailer has a traffic counting device, it doesn't necessarily mean they're actually embracing, internalizing, and actually using this data, which is even more shocking.
Crikey, Mark. I am genuinely flabbergasted by that because I do presume I know every store I've ever run or have worked with has, but as you say, are they using that in the right way? And also, do you know what? If you're listening and watching to this right now and you don't, please do something about it. It is incredibly valuable to know, but even to be able to track that actually I have X amount of store traffic at this time or on this day versus the next day or in the run up to Golden Quarter and holiday season. We need to know these things. Having data that we use every day as retailers is so important. So yeah, lesson 101, I think, is to actually make sure you're tracking who's coming into your store in that respect. Another kind of key concept of this book, and this fascinated me because I definitely never thought of it in this way, the idea of super converting stores. So store locations that convert visitors to sales at a significantly higher rate. Certainly, I suppose, within chains of stores or groups of stores. How do retailers then identify them? And I suppose what insights then would you glean to lift performance then across multiple stores?
Yeah, you know what? I dedicate a whole chapter to this topic. Melissa, over the last 22 years that I've been doing headcount as an analytics service for retailers, during this time, I've analyzed literally hundreds of different retail operations from small chains to large chains to independent single store locations. Not single location because they are the only contributor. But what I find, especially in the largest chains, let's look at some of the largest chains. Invariably, some number of their stores convert at an extraordinarily higher level than every other store. Okay, So what's different about these stores? Now, the way to come at this, and I explain it all in the book, so anyone that has this data can just do it for themselves. The important thing is to organize your stores by traffic cohorts or traffic volume. So your low traffic stores, medium traffic, high traffic stores, you might organize them or segment them by mall stores versus off mall, etc. But when you do that, what you will still find is that stores that have similar levels of traffic have some convert at significantly higher levels. What's different about those stores? That's where you want to examine best practices, and not just any best practices, but the very best practices. And the reason why I say very best practice is because these are stores within your own chain. They're the stores that have the same systems, the same product mixes generally, the same staffing approaches, the same everything. So how is it that these stores are converting so much higher than all the others that have the same amount of traffic? And in the book, I talk about where you start by looking at how much staff you're allocating. Maybe there's natural occurrences in some stores that are causing it, but invariably you will glean some ideas, tactics, and strategies that these stores are doing that can be applied to all the other stores. And that's where the gold is. And if you can do that, then you can start to raise conversion rates across the enterprise. And it is really shocking how even a modest increase in shopper conversion rates can deliver a huge impact on top line sales.
I love this idea because the data's already within the company or within the group. We're at that time of year now that an awful lot of retailers are bringing their senior people, their store managers, their C-suite together to kind of celebrate and also push forward as we get into such a busy season. What an amazing exercise to do together is to really glean how, as you said, the best of the best are doing what they do, to share that. Because again, you're doing that for free. That's not costing you anything. I love this idea. I think it's really important for those those large groups out there to, again, dig inwards. We've talked about this a lot this episode. Empower the people that are working for you, bring the ideas out and share them across the group, because there is nothing better for retail people to be able to talk about why they're doing the best of what they're doing. I absolutely love that. We've gone from groups then. The smaller retailers then as well, like we know you work with a lot of independents. What can the smaller retailers then benefit from the insights then that you've also gathered over the last while?
Here's the truth of the matter. A small independent retailer needs to know the same thing as a 1,000-store retailer needs to know. That's the truth of the matter. And remember, I started this when I worked in a single location retail store. And so the ideas apply. Here's what I strongly believe, that store traffic and conversion insights are as fundamental to a retail store as electricity, as internet access, or point of sale. It's foundational. It is part of the building blocks. I think that store traffic insights should be like a utility that retailers just buy, that they have as a basic input into how they run their stores. And so I think every retailer, regardless of size or category, and I've worked in so many, I have not encountered a category yet where traffic hasn't informed decisions and caused a retailer to make a different kind of decision than they would have otherwise.
That's incredible. It really is. And in that respect, Mark, what's the idea why? Like, why don't more retailers use the data that they have? As you said, even if half of them have these footfall counters, so they have the data there, why is it that so few talk about it, use it, or even boost, as you say, use it to boost, their sales?
Well, you know what? The answer is as different as every retailer that exists, is the truth of the matter. And ultimately, leadership is accountable for setting the direction and setting the priorities for their organizations. And so that's where the obligation and the accountability for this has to lie, with the ownership, leadership, executives of these organizations. You know what? The world is running so fast, and we're living in this age of AI, and everything's AI, and and look, it is really important, these ideas, but we've given up on the basics. We've run so far and fast that we're forgetting about the fundamental things that need to happen in stores. And so again, I got to put the responsibility back on leadership, and that's why. Here's what I do. This is my third book. Here's what I do when my books land in my doorstep. I start sending them to CEOs of retail chains. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's up to them to decide if they're going to embrace and if these ideas capture their imaginations. But I'll leave it at it's up to the leaders.
It is. And you know what? I would strongly advise, having read this latest book, it's definitely something. Because again, we're hearing so much talk of so much spend on tech solutions for our retail problems. And I say that in inverted commas. We see the spend really ramp up for AI, but actually, we're sitting on this fundamental basic that could make or break your business, and we're not using it properly. We're not driving that message home. So I would strongly advise to read the book. And again, incredibly practical, loads of really good takeaways, stuff that you and your senior leadership team can do today, which is what I love. You're not just talking the talk, Mark. You can tell that you've practiced this with retailers over the years. And that's why it's full of nuggets. It's full of easy read nuggets to take away and do right now. So on that then, for retailers listening and watching, if there was one thing they were to implement from your book today, right now, what would you suggest they do? Where would they start?
The number one thing, if there was only one thing, I'd say staff and schedule your store labor relative to the number of people that are visiting your store. If you do nothing but that alone, you will improve the odds of converting those shoppers because your resources are there when your shoppers are there. That alone can increase and improve conversion rates. And if that's all you do, it would make a difference.
I absolutely second that and fully agree. As someone that worked on the shop floor running stores for many a year, it makes perfect sense. And especially at this time of year, it's so important. So, look, Mark, last question then. The book's out on the 30th of September. But other than that, and it is a brilliant book, I might add. What's next? What's coming up next for you over the next while?
Thank you for that. And then I'm spending the rest of this year sending books to retail executives and continuing to spread this message, Melissa. I just think retailers have never had more challenges, I think, than they're facing today. They're looking for answers, and that's what I try to provide in this book. And lots of retailers already have this data. So all they need to do is have the will to try something different, and it's right under their noses. And I want retailers to thrive. I love retail. It's in my blood. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I just want retail to keep going, and I want retailers to count traffic. That's it.
It's a really good message and such a strong one there as well. Build on that foundation that you already have, and it'll make you money, as Mark said. So definitely wise words there. Look, if you've enjoyed today's podcast episode, please do like and share it from any of the podcast platforms out there. Share it with your network. And of course, if you're on social media, tag me, Melissa Moore, and the Retail Tea Break podcast. You can, of course, listen back to the previous 8 seasons on your favorite podcast platform. While you're there, do me a favor, hit that follow button so that you get to listen first every week. And of course, check out the Retail Tea Break podcast on YouTube. You can watch back all those previous episodes too. Connect, and I really, really mean this, connect with myself and Mark on LinkedIn. Mark's continually sharing great nuggets, great insights, and obviously grab yourself a copy of the latest book, Store Traffic is a Gift, The Retailer's Guide to Converting Visits into Sales, published on the 30th of September. I'm obviously going to pop all the links in the show notes, and I'll be sharing that across social media as well. Mark, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, first of all, for writing the book. It was such a brilliant read and such a great book for huge insights, golden nuggets, and great takeaways. And thank you for being on the podcast today.
It was my pleasure, Melissa. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to RevLifter for sponsoring today's episode. Remember, RevLifter help e-commerce businesses use smarter promotions and turns more visitors into customers without killing profits. Head to www.revlifter.com and try intelligent offers free for the next 90 days.